Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Um, Welcome to our discussion. Inshallah, today we will be continuing the discussion we've been having on the 25th word, uh, and we will be continuing with the first light. I will link it here. Before we start, I'll just make a quick dua. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, um, just as a disclaimer before we begin this 25th word as a whole has been difficult for me. And up until this point, Nursi was giving us an introduction to the Quran. The verse that he uses in the beginning of the 25th word is, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Say, if all mankind and all jinn were to come together to produce the like of this Quran, they could not produce the like of it, even if they were to help and support each other. This is the verse that he began the word with, and it's the verse that it's talking about how there's nothing that can come close to the Quran. The Quran is unparalleled. You can't produce anything like it. And in his introduction, he went into some definitions or descriptions of the Quran. He talked about things like how it was a pre-eternal translator, a post-eternal interpreter. He also talked about how the Quran, it spoke. The Quran was the complete. So the word he uses or the sentence he uses is it's a holy scripture full of wisdom, which looks to and inspects all sides of the sublime throne. So you could say it inspects all sides of all creation. And then he talked about how the book contains the summary of the prophets, and then all the saints and all the different levels. So Nursi was giving a description of the Quran. It seemed, when we first read those descriptions, it seemed hard to understand. It seemed distant. But over the discussions we've had the past few weeks, we dived deeper into those, and it made more sense. It seemed more. It didn't seem as much like definitions or words you memorize that he described the Quran with, but it seemed like these were things that you truly saw as you dived into the Quran and you contemplated on it. You took some time to contemplate and reflect on the Quran, then you're able to reach these same descriptions that Nursi was mentioning it with. So now the first light. So let's just begin, and inshallah, some good things come out of it. And as I said, whatever comment you can make or all the help you can give would be very, I'd appreciate it, since, as I said, it's a difficult word for me. So first light, the light consists of 3 rays. First ray, this is the eloquence of the Quran, which is at the degree of miraculousness. Its eloquence is a wonderful eloquence born of the beauty of its word order, the perfection of its conciseness, the marvels of its style, its singularity and pleasantness, the excellence of its expression, its superiority and clarity, the power and truth of its meanings, and from the purity and fluency of its language, which for 1,300 years has challenged the most brilliant men of letters of mankind, their most celebrated orators and the most profoundly learned of them, and invited them to dispute it. It has provoked them intensely, and although it has invited them to dispute it, those geniuses, whose heads touch the skies in their pride and conceit, have been unable to so much as open their mouths to do so, and have bowed their heads utterly humiliated. Thus, we shall point to the miraculousness in its eloquence in 2 aspects. So, yeah, I think I will stop here for now. So when I first read this, I mean, the first thoughts that come to me, Nursi, he's speaking for both sides. He's saying that the Quran challenged people. He's talking about how eloquent the Quran is, and he lists other marvels of the Quran, like its style, its conciseness, its meanings, and its truth. And then he says that it's uh, that the Quran has invited others to dispute it. It's invited these geniuses whose heads touch the skies in their pride and conceit. And then Nursi says, but these people have been unable to even open their mouths to do so, and that they've bowed their head utterly humiliated. And my first thought is, have they really? Nursi speaking for both sides here, but I'm considering these other people, have they really bowed their heads humiliated? And then after I thought about that, I thought about myself and I said, when I read the Quran, let's say, I'm sure we all have some pride and conceit. And I'm like, when I read the Quran, do I bow my head humiliated? Am I able to put anything forth? What's the response that I have? So I'm just trying to see, like, this conversation that Nursi's having, or he's speaking for both sides. I'm trying to see how true it is in myself as well. And actually, what I did was I just then opened the Quran, a translation I have. And I know that, generally when we think of the eloquence, we think of, let's say, the poetry or the sounds and how the words come together in the Arabic and how beautiful that was. But that's really something that I can't comprehend right now, since I don't understand the Arabic language like that. But there's other things that Nursi lists here. It's not just about the sounds and the word order. He also talks about conciseness and marvels of its style. He talks about its clarity, the power of its truth and meanings. This is much more than just it sounds nice. It's much more than it has a poetic feel to it. So I just opened a part of the Quran, and I happen to be at Surah Al-An'am. I'll post this. So maybe we could take a look at this translation here and see if we can. I think it's worth maybe looking at this and seeing if we do truly feel that the Quran is eloquent. And interestingly, like when I was reading these verses, I was like, yeah, it definitely seems that Nursi is speaking truth. But it got cut off, so I'll post the whole thing. It's about 300 words. Would anyone like to read this? Or I can continue. So this is from Surah Al-An'am, verse 95 to 102. And I just, I posted in the chat box. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Indeed, Allah is the cleaver of grain and date seeds. He brings the living out of the dead and brings the dead out of the living. That is Allah. So how are you deluded? He is the cleaver of daybreak and has made the night for rest and the sun and moon for calculation. That is a determination of the exalted in might, the knowing. And it is he who placed for you the stars that you may be guided by them through the darknesses of the land and sea. We have detailed the signs for a people who know. And it is he who produced you from one soul and gave you a place of dwelling and of storage. We have detailed the signs for a people who understand. It is he who sends down rain from the sky, and we produce thereby the growth of all things. We produce from it greenery from which we produce grains arranged in layers. And from the palm trees, of its emerging fruit are clusters hanging low. And we produce gardens of grapevines and olives and pomegranates, similar yet varied. Look at each of its fruits when it yields and at its ripening. Indeed, in that are signs for people who believe, but they have attributed to Allah partners, the jinn, while He has created them and have fabricated for Him sons and daughters. Exalted is He and high above what they describe. He is originator of the heavens and the earth. How could He have a son when He does not have a companion and He created all things? And He is of all things knowing. That is Allah, your Lord. There is no deity except Him, the creator of all things. So worship Him, and He is disposer of all things. So I would like to hear your thoughts about what you felt, or your thoughts about just these verses, the translation. This is not the Arabic, it is a translation. However, they are verses that, as I'm sure you can tell, they start from a very broad spectrum. They start from, actually it starts from grain and date seeds, and then it goes out to living in the dead, and then daybreak, and then the sun and the moon, and then talks about stars. It covers a very wide expanse of things. So just I'd like to leave it for any of you. Do you have any comments or thoughts just about these verses we read? Maybe if they make you feel anything, or they interested you in any way? Go ahead, Brother Yusuf.
So there's a very beautiful flow of contemplation in these verses. Actually, it starts, well, it talks about as if a single action, well, multiple actions, but combining them together, showing us that actually all of them are the same action, highlighting, implying that, or at least first attracting my attention to the fact that the one who cleaves the grain and fruit kernel and then brings forth the living out of it, then goes with daybreak, like as if it's another seed that is being broken, that is being cleaved open. Then from there, by combining these actions, moves on to day and night, sun and moon. So as if combining, stitching together all these actions, showing the signature of oneness, the stamp of oneness over all of them. And brick by brick, if you like, combining or building up this, if you like, castle of oneness of the Creator. And then bringing me to the conclusion that like he keeps mentioning it, but for example, in verse number 100, and he says, limitless is he in his glory and sublimely exalted above anything that man may devise by way of definition. So as if this is, if you like, a quote unquote natural conclusion that the rest of the previous verses is building up. And when you read this conclusion, you would say that, yes, indeed, he must be, because all these steps built very beautifully to the point that when you read this conclusion sentence here, and then in the following verse, then you say, indeed, this is the case. So a very beautiful composition is in here. And it's also inviting me to observe this in the book of universe. So as if in here, Quran is reading me the book of universe and then saying that this is, so giving me this specific perspective that is being mentioned from verses 95 to 100. And by the end of verse number 100 and 101, moves on to tell me at the conclusion, carries me to the conclusion in 101, 102 verses, 103. So it goes on going. So in this sense, I guess, in a very beautiful way, the what's it? So the point is being provided, supported with evidence, and then conclusion is being made very beautifully, I would say.
Yeah. So Aishna, you can go ahead, then I'll talk.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Jamal Barak. I guess one thing that, in addition to what Brother Yusuf said, there is that sense of accessibility, right? That all of these things that are within the book of the universe are within my reach. That what I seek is really within my reach. There's no, this is not, it's not saying that this is something that only the elite will be able to reach, or only someone with some degree upon degree education will be able to understand. This is something that is out in the world, and it's an invitation for me to observe what's out in the world and interact with it. And I guess in literature, at least, since even the part we read about was also about eloquence, and I'm just thinking about these verses in relation to that. In literature, it's always about show, don't tell, right? You don't want in a story the character to tell you that they're smart or that they're brave. You want to experience it. Imagery is important. You have to demonstrate it through description. And here I just listening to these verses, these images come alive because one, I've experienced what it means to look to an olive tree. I've experienced what it means to look to the sun or the moon. And all of these this text these verses bring to life that imagery with which I can connect and form some sort of meaningful relationship with. And I guess going back to the text that you initially read, the first, was it the first ray or what it was called? I was just thinking, communication lies at the heart of our societies, right? Of how to communicate ideas in the best way, the most memorable way, and if I want truth to be communicated to me, I don't want it to just be communicated in any way. I want it to be communicated to me in the most accessible way, in the most beautiful way, right? I like beauty. I like hearing beautiful poems, and I like hearing truth expressed in a beautiful way, which is essentially what poetry is. And part of that beauty or eloquence is because it's within my reach, is because it talks to me as at my most fundamental level as a human being, without discriminating. And so those were just some I don't have a conclusive statement, but those were some thoughts I wanted to share. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Now you should be able to hear me. Correct? So I was just saying, thank you for both of your comments. I think I would agree with both of you very much. I do think that these verses were very beautiful and very clearly put. Before I continue, though, I see that you have your hand up, Brother Abdul. Aziz, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, sure. I think that also, to me, part of the beauty comes from that there is no leftover. It's like the conciseness of these words. Like if you look at them as a guidance, basically there is nothing there extra. And I think for that to happen, something really beauty would come out of that. At least that's one way I look at it.
Yeah, definitely. It's very encompassing. It doesn't just focus on a very narrow set of things. It touches on everything. It touches on your daily life, from like things like grain and date seeds. It touches on things like looking up at space or looking up in the skies and what you see there. It touches into life and death, very big and important matters for humans. And then, talks about sending down rain from the sky. It literally, I mean, it touches almost everything you could think of in terms of like, the grand scheme of things. And I just also like wanted to, also emphasize like a point that Brother Yusuf made about, in the beginning, and I kind of noticed it after he said it, is like it talks about how Allah is the cleaver of grain and date seeds. It talks about one that cleaves, and it also then talks about bringing the living out of the dead. You can also think of it a cleaving that's happening there. Like there is a change, just like you break you cleave a grain and a date seed. You can also cleave, let's say, the dead and bring out life, and you can also cleave the life and then create death, and also like the cleaver of date break. And then also it talks about like you could cleaving things like stars, maybe that cleave the darkness of the sky. There is a fluidity, as he was saying. It's not jarring at all. It's very fluid. There's like a pattern that makes sense and just keeps going and going and flowing very nicely. And actually, it's surprising that when I read the first ray that Nursi he wrote in the first light, I had some doubts. I was like, is this really truly so? Is the Quran really this eloquent? Is it really this meaningful? We do have several discussions like throughout a week, and then we've many people have discussions about the Quran. They sit for hours and hours and years. They study years, like their whole lifetime, on like maybe verses and the surahs of it. And really it's because like in these discussions, as we study, we are able to extract more fruit from it. We're able to see more meaning in it. We're given more light, but still I still had doubts as I was reading this. I was like, is it really this eloquent? And I'm happy that just opening the Quran and landing upon these verses that I didn't even select, but I do by like reading these in the translations of them, it just lets me see that they truly are very meaningful. The truth is very clear, and even in the translation, it's very fluid and very nice to hear. And what makes it even more nice, it's not just it's not just nice words put together. What makes it nice is that there's truth behind it. There are these questions that I have. I'm like, why are these stars in the sky? I look up at the sky, and especially now, I don't know if you have noticed, but there's like these two planets that are so close and so bright in the sky. It's the Jupiter and Saturn. They're just very close and very apparent. Like when you look at the sky, you can't help but seeing them. And I'm just like, why are they there? It's a question that I have. And I'm similarly with rain, or similarly with like just everything, like day and night that constantly happens. These are questions that you have, and then the Quran comes forth, and then here the creator is speaking and saying, I am the one that did that. I am the one that is doing this. So it is not just nice words put together, but it is words that I am actually seeking. I am hoping to hear these words. I'm hoping for guidance about why these things are happening and who is behind these things. So it is also answering my questions. It's not just entertainment. It's actually very needed words that I need to hear. Excuse me. Okay. I think maybe let's go slower over it. In case anyone wants to make further comments, I'll just try to go sentence by sentence of the first ray, and then I'll move on to the first aspect. So the first ray, this is the eloquence of the Quran, which is at the degree of miraculousness. And degree of miraculousness, the way I understand it, is no one else could come close to this, or it is at a degree that has no causes. A miracle is like a tree uprooting itself and walking. That is a miracle. Another miracle is the fact that life, or like a baby is born out of nothing. Another miracle is the fact that you exist from one second to the next. These are all different miracles, but a miracle is something that it shouldn't be happening, or even in like the pattern of things, it shouldn't be happening. And I understand this is a human couldn't have written this, or a created being couldn't have written this. And you know, this is harder to confirm, but just based on the fact that when I read the Quran, or when I'm seeking for a message from my creator, from the one that, you know, gave me life, the one that is going to tell me what my purpose is. And I need a book that is from this creator, that tells me what my purpose is, why he created me. And you know, as I am seeking this book, and I come upon the Quran, and I see that it fulfills this, or it is from such a creator. And in such a sense, I could confirm that it is better than anything else I've ever seen. It fulfills me better than other things I've seen, and I do see. And as long as I do approach it with the idea, like I approach it with this idea that, is this truly from my creator? And as long as it doesn't deny that, or as long as it lives up to this, which it does, then it will be a miracle for me. It will be from my creator for me. That wasn't the best explanation, but essentially, it has no parallel in this world, and I would say like that's quite easily like seeable, observable, because when you read the Quran, even when you read it now, it's very. I've never read anything else like it. I don't see any other person writing anything like it. And you know, I've read a little bit of the Bible, but even in that, I don't see things like these verses either. But I haven't read all the texts out there, so I can't make a blanket claim like that. But as far as I know, there's nothing like it. And its eloquence is a wonderful eloquence, born of the beauty of its word order, the perfection of its conciseness, the marvels of its style, its singularity and pleasantness, the excellence of its expression, its superiority and clarity, the power and truth of its meanings, and from the purity and fluency of its language, which for 1,300 years has challenged the most brilliant men of letters of mankind. Their most celebrated orators and the most profoundly learned of them, and invited them to dispute it. So I could use your help here. When it says invited them to dispute it, I understand it to make reference to the verse where it asks people to even bring, let's say, anything like it. Or even in these verses, it mentions something like you can't do anything like it. If I can find it here. Well, it says, exalted is he, high above what they describe. And so it does mention that in the verses that I linked. But, you know, for me, maybe one question, an obvious question is, has there been a challenge against the Quran? I'm sure there have been many challenges in terms of people saying that it's a fake. It's not really from God. I'm sure those texts are very pervasive out there, or those claims. And also we could take some challenges as people that say that there is no God at all, or that say that the one that creates the heavens and the one that creates the stars and the sun and the moon, you know, it's actually just happening by itself. These are other claims that are trying to dispute the Quran. Actually, there are challenges there against it. And I guess my question is then, you know, or let me continue because then it'll come up later. But it says that it has provoked them intensely. So the Quran has provoked these people intensely. So, you know, we could say scientists, or we could say people from different religions, or we can say ourselves too. You know, I definitely sometimes I can read a verse, and there are times when and I mean, I think this is very normal that it doesn't make so much sense, and you could have some doubts, or you can be like have questions. Maybe you don't dispute it, but it doesn't make sense to you at the same time. And then, so Nursi continues and says, and although it has invited them to dispute it, those geniuses whose heads touch the skies in their pride and conceit have been unable to so much as open their mouths to do so, and have bowed their heads utterly humiliated. Thus, we should point to the miraculousness and its eloquence in two aspects. So, I'll pose this question. I posed, I guess, just a similar question earlier, but the question is basically, have these geniuses, have these people that the Quran has invited to dispute it, have they been unable to open their mouths to do so? Have they really bowed their heads utterly humiliated? I think let's ponder that for a few seconds. Abdulaziz, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum again. So, many of these words probably we have said in these discussions, but I think one way to think about these challenges is like to a person, instead of thinking about challenging others or a group of other people. Is like within, at least I know about me, within me, there are many proposed alternatives of this. Of these words. So I like either, okay, this is not true, or this is what if I try this alternative instead of it, or something like that. So within me there are many challenges without looking for other brilliant people, and I wonder if that's what the Quran here is like pointing to. It's like within you, of all things you can think of, let's see if they can beat the words of this Quran or this ayah.
Oh, thank you for very beautifully putting that. I think exactly that we do need to focus on that primarily, because what matters most for me is not whether, as you said, other geniuses understand it, but can I even dispute it within myself? And I do have challenges in myself, as you're saying. And these disputes that I have in myself, do they have like a firm ground? Like, are they true? Like, let's say I read a verse and I'm like, no, this could have been written by a human. Or maybe I could say, this doesn't speak to me at all. It doesn't explain the universe to me at all. This cannot be from my creator. I might have some disputes, and does the Quran actually solve them? Does it actually give me words to humiliate me? I saw, is this a new hand by you, Brother Aziz? If so, go ahead.
Maybe, oh, sorry, I probably should have lowered it, sorry.
Okay. So I see Nazmul, and I also think Atik had his hand up. Maybe not, but Nazmul, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, guys. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't know what to make of his claim that it's humiliated every single challenger, right? Because not every single person has studied the Quran properly. So even like Western intellectuals, I mean, just now in this century, they're really starting to study the Quran. But back in the day, I mean, they didn't really study it properly. But I can speak to the Prophet ﷺ's own lifetime, right? And in Arabic literature, we have this period called the period of Shahada. So the period of Shahada is a period of time in which any type of Arabic that was used in that period, you can use that as a proof for a grammatical rule, right? So any Arabic that comes after that period, you can't use it as a proof, right? And the reason is because in the period of Shahada, the Arabic is so pure and so eloquent that it's closest to its source. So obviously this period is the pre-Islamic poets going into the Prophet's life and after him, right? After him about 200 years. And it is a historical proof that, at least in the Prophet's own lifetime, that the Quran subjugated and silenced the most eloquent and greatest literary figures of Arabic literature. I mean, that's a fact, right? And even so there are 10 famous poems of Arabic literature. They're called the Mu'allaqa, and they were so famous that they were hung on the Kaaba itself. two of those poets, and they were alive during the Prophet's lifetime, both of them became Muslim. So one of them was Labid, and the other one was Zuhair, right? And and both of these people became Muslim because of the force of the Quran. So it's, I mean, I don't know what to make of his claim that it's defeated every single challenger after the Prophet, but at least in the lifetime of the Prophet, the Quran was supreme. It was seen as something that was miraculous in its eloquence. So, and I think that's a good argument. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, Jazakumullah khair. Actually, in the first aspect where Nursi goes into after the first ray, he's going to actually dive into that. He's going to talk about how in that period it was truly very eloquent, and in that period it was all about the eloquence of the words and the oration, and how in its time, you know, the Quran even beat them. So I do think that, yeah, as you said, Nursi agrees with that. Like, it truly was astounding in its time. Our brother Yusuf, go ahead.
And as for humiliation in here, like think of it this way: if let's say, yeah, uh, there's a girl named Maryam, let's say, and she is a master of calligraphy, and I barely know how to read letters, but she's a calligrapher. And this is a real life example. When this girl is working on writing letters, I take her pen and I write a wow over the paper, and I say, look, mine is better than yours. Uh, and she laughs at me. So what's happening in here is really out of my ignorance. Out of my ignorance, I'm just claiming or challenging, and I might be really thinking within limitations of my myself that actually my wow is as good as hers. But anybody who knows a little bit of calligraphy would say that this is so funny. Like this is not even a wow, maybe. They can even say that it looks like ba. Are you sure it's wow? Or it resembles fa more than it resembles wow, they could say. So this is also sometimes what's happening. Like some people are challenging Quran. Uh, Now I'm not talking about the linguistics. Definitely there had been linguistic examples, and it's going to be mentioned in the text that will follow, but also in terms of explaining the existence. Uh, we come up with an alternative explanation to this existence, and we say that here it is, and we explained it better than Quran did. But actually, this is an embarrassing claim to the extent that we start understanding what Quran says, we will realize how funny our claims have been. So this is what I understand from, and this is why the author in here is specifically mentioning people of thought. So otherwise, ignorant people can always make such claims, but to the extent that you realize or you become learned, then I guess you will realize how funny it looks to claim to uh, explain the existence as a challenge to Quran's way of explaining the existence. So, I mean, there will always be people that challenge, but being embarrassed is going to become visible to those that are learned.
Brother Brikan, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair. Thank you to everyone for the beautiful comments. Except the last comment by Yusuf, the example he gave had many logical problems. So I want to give a better example with an art of illumination this time. Just kidding. So anyway, that was an internal joke. So at the beginning, at the very beginning of the 25th word, the author was spending too much time, if you can remember. This is, I guess, the 7th week we studying 25th word. And like at the very beginning, the author said we will study the eloquence of Quran, and now he's doing so with the first light. But before that, for 6 weeks we studied, and it seems the author spent a lot of time to describe Quran. If you could remember the previous weeks, he wrote all these things to remind us what Quran is. So at that time, I had some ideas why he's doing so, but now it becomes even more clear the purpose and the wisdom behind it. Now author is saying that nobody has been challenged, or at least successfully, but in the first rate, for the first aspect, he will even claim that nobody even tried to imitate Quran and or challenge Quran. But as you said, our lovely moderator said, there have been maybe hundreds, if not thousands, of works who challenges religion. The hundreds of works that challenge religion, that challenge belief, that challenge faith, whatever. So you can take them from one aspect as a challenge to Quran as well, right? If you are not careful enough to understand what Quran is. An author at the very beginning, from the beginning, giving us very long, detailed descriptions about Quran. And he was saying that Quran is the commentator of the universe, interpreter of what is seen, what is not seen. He was, suggesting that the Quran is your light in your life, is your guidance, your personal guidance, saying that it makes everything in your life meaningful. It shows the purpose of your life, so on and so forth. And the verses that you shared at the beginning of this discussion, talking about the creation of the universe, creation of things in the universe, how they point to their creator, and so on. And when I look at these works who can be taken as challenge to Quran, I, with my limited, of course, understanding and knowledge, I don't remember anyone who, talks against religion, talks about things which is other than politics. Like, oh, religion bad or Islam is bad because of the people, the war, their attitude against homosexuals, slavery, whatever. Every single objection I read, is about the politics. It's about, the religion as an institution. It's about the religion as the law, like what to do, what not to do, all these challenges about the woman. And I never heard anyone saying that, oh, no, do you know what? The stars, I know who created them, and it's other than what is suggested in Quran. People do say, yes, at least implicitly, they happen by themselves, but it's not then explanation. It's just, it simply means, I will not explain. I don't think it requires any explanation. I will not explain. But Quran uniquely says, no, I will explain, and here is the explanation. And I never heard any, a challenge raised against that. I never heard any challenge saying that I have a better interpretation of the book of universe. Because the old people I heard or read would say, wait a second, universe is not a book. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't point to anything else. So Quran would say, for instance, that everything you observe, everything you experience points to their creator who, right, Allazi, and then continues. Give some details about the creator that everything points to. And I never heard or read, again, this doesn't prove anything, but in my limited world, I see how what is written here makes sense, because I never heard or read anyone saying that, no, these things that you experience point to something else. I heard things like, oh, they don't point to anything. Meaning, you know what, I don't care. I heard this a lot in a more poetic way, or maybe in a form which sounds or seems intelligent. But I never heard or read anything other than that, like other than meh. So can I take them as challenge the Quran? I'm not sure, because Quran claims something saying that everything in creation points to their creator, and this is the creator. So if you want to challenge, you have to say that no, it's like they point to something else. They point to another creator or another creators. And you have to be successful in that. We know that there are other alternatives, people say, like, oh, it's just natural laws, or it, as you said, it happens by itself, and so on. But we also know that they are not real explanations. They are just like a cover stories about saying that the universe doesn't mean anything. So you cannot challenge a meaningful, let's say, the artwork or meaningful explanation by saying that, oh, there is no meaning. So anyway, what I'm trying to say, we should take these claims here raised by author that nobody challenged, nobody's success in challenging or whatever. They are written for Quran as described by author at the very beginning. So they are not written for a history book, for instance, because I know there are much better history books out there. I know there are other history books which would give you more detail than Quran. It is not written for like a poetry book. I'm not into poetry, but I can imagine better poetry works. I don't know. Again, like, I sincerely don't know. But if somebody says, oh, I'm sorry, but I prefer X or Y or Z, I guess the Nobel Prize, the new one, goes to poet. So somebody may say, oh, she's a better poet, I'm sorry. I wouldn't be offended. I wouldn't say, no, this is not possible. The best poem is in the Quran. I wouldn't say that, because the Quran is not a book of poetry. But the author says, giving these truths that cannot be challenged in a way which is at the highest level of eloquence. So it's not only about the eloquence, it's just one aspect. But it's the eloquence of narration of the truth. the best interpretation of the universe, best interpretation of your own experiences. I never heard or read any challenge saying that I can, or this work, instead of Quran, this work can answer all personal problems of Yusuf, who lived in 2020 in Philadelphia. I never heard. But Quran says, I give an explanation for your own life, every one of you. And then as a humanity as whole. And then as a, the living creatures as whole. And then as every existing things as whole. I never heard any challenge who saying that we can do better. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much. Jazakumullah khair. I think you bring up some very good points. I'll just start from your last point. Is there anything else out there that's going to solve all your problems? It's, before we even go into the challenges of like how they dispute Quran, but like, is there anything else out there that has even a hope, like a slight hope of solving your problems? And, especially today in the modern world, like, there's a lot of things like they might give you things like meditation, mindfulness, working out, exercising, as one of the brothers wrote in the chat box, weed, sure, weed, and I don't know, many other things, like just get up in the morning. I remember we were speaking about this the other day, but like they say take 10 minutes and meditate, or just do things that will make you feel better, or there's these solutions, or go do yoga, have good friends, go hang out with your friends more, have deep relationships with your friends. So there is these like just endless number of things they kind of serve you, and each one's like, maybe if you try it, it seems to be okay, like, okay, there's a little bit something there, like I mean, I'm not sure about, like, let's just pick like the most crazy example that I was given, like let's say you smoke weed and you just like, it's like, oh, you feel good, you feel nice, but then the question comes, what did it actually solve in your life? Has this actually changed anything? It does feel good, I'm sure. The ones who use it could say so, but does it actually change anything in your life? Does it solve anything? Or exercising, like if you exercise, you feel more tired, and it feels nice, you feel like you push your body, and I'm sure there is actually some truth in it. There's truth in using this body that's been given to you, and not just like sitting down all day. But does it solve your problems, or are you just like, is it just another way to I don't know, tolerate more, or just to distract yourself? So in just hitting on that point of, is there any other book, or is there any other solution out there for your daily problems? I would say that I have not ran across it. And also the Quran, it doesn't just magically solve my problems when I just open it and I read a verse. It requires some patience and study and contemplation, just as the world, it's like it goes day and night. There's like a process to things. But the Quran, it shows a light of guidance in it. As we study verses, you find peace within them. As we studied the verse I linked before, when you read such a verse, like, as I said, you have these questions. You have like these very real questions of, why is this happening? I think the thing that gives me the most pain is like when things happen, I don't know why, or it doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand. And I just want to understand, why is this happening, or what the creator wants out of me. And then it's these types of verses where it says, I am the one who cleaves the grain and daisies, like he's the one that cleaves daybreak. These types of verses that give me relief, especially when I know that the creator is speaking, and there is nothing that can dispute it. Because when you, as Brother Bikram was saying, these challenges, they come with like, oh, nature does it, or it happens by itself. There's very little claim in them. They're almost basically nonsense if you just sit down and like truly study them. And like, since these claims are so weak, when you read the Quran, you see that it is the only one that's coming with a claim that makes sense, that fits into place with what you also observe out there. Also, I just had like an anecdote, something I remember, because we were like the Nursi's saying that these geniuses, their heads touched the skies and pride and conceit, and like they bowed their heads in utter humiliation. This is what Nursi's saying. One example this reminded me of is like I was a while ago, I was listening to an astrologist, or no, not an astrologist, astrophysicist. So even more fancy, an astrophysicist, and there's like some famous ones out there. But they came upon this question of meaning. Like someone asked the question, so why is this happening? Like, what's the meaning of it? And then the astrophysicist like took a pause. And it's like, oh, you're asking what the meaning of life is? Like, oh, what a silly question to ask. Like, why are you asking this question? It's like he's making fun of the guy for asking what is the meaning of life. And then the other guy immediately said, oh, no, I'm not asking what the meaning of life is. That's too far for me. Like, I wouldn't ask that. Like, it's become like a question, this meaning of life, that it's made fun of to ask about it. So I would say that, yeah, they're unable to open their mouths about this. Really, they are. And and I don't want to just put blame on others, but like just what I see, another explanation I see is like, when everything like they talk about how, oh, you might think that there might be a perfect design, that everything is created so well and there's an order to things, but they're also saying, what if just everything just was, and it will be, everything just is, there is no creator. It's just like, it just happened that way. This is an answer that they give. And then they say that in the future, we're going to figure it out more. We'll learn about it. So they really do not open their mouths to answer this question. In this way, I can confirm what Nursi is saying, that truly they are bowing their heads in humiliation, like in answering the questions of like, what is the meaning of these things? But also, I do want to just stress also, like what Brother Abdulaziz said, that we do first and foremost need to like look into ourselves instead of like these external people that are disputing, but also in ourselves. For sure, I'm sure we all have our own disputes, maybe subconsciously or consciously, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You have your own questions. These are questions that you have. The world is like, life is, let's say, an education process, and it's where you're learning and you're developing, and you have your own questions also about verses in the Quran that it may mention. Not every verse might speak to you so well, but it is those verses that do speak to you so well that truly explain your life to you, that truly, like, it's like a key that unlocks your world and says, wait, the creator of the Quran, the speech of the Quran truly knows me. It's able to explain my life to me. It's those verses that allow you to see the light of it. And in the other verses, you have patience and you ask for guidance to try to understand them more, which is, I would say, it's perfectly normal. There's no other way about it, and it's perfectly fine. Yes, Brother Yusuf, go ahead.
So like in the past, when I was maybe initially starting to have some questions, after during those high school days, you are getting to know more different worlds than what your parents used to think about life, about science, about religion, whatnot. So during these times, hearing someone challenging Quran could easily shake my faith. If somebody was coming out and saying that, see, such and such has written some text titled The Real Quran, and they say it's Arabic is awesome, whatever. So this could have made me feel shaken, really. Because I also heard another example from Dr. Ali. He says once he was doing his PhD in England, there used to be like this, I'm pretty sure it's still there, this Oriental Studies department, maybe under a different title nowadays. But in there, they were learning Arabic, like quite good Arabic. And then they were replicating the language of the Quran. And then they were saying that here, Quran says we cannot come up with something similar. Here is something that we come up with. and it sounds like very similar to what Quran is saying. So as if they won the challenge. And as you guys were giving the examples of this astrophysicist and whatnot, there he is using his title to ridicule the question, not to attempt answering the question. Such examples today would be, they will use their title as professor of Arabic maybe, and say that here is the text, here it is, and I confirm that this is as good. So these are the things that could shake somebody's faith, especially if they're a little bit more sensitive, maybe has a little bit of OCD, this and that. This is going to be a challenge for faith. But as in here, the author is talking about them being ridiculed in front of truth, I would say. So this is why I would like to emphasize that to the extent that we get used to, we familiarize ourselves with what Quran is, what it talks about, what Quran means, as Badr Birkan was saying, it's not poetry. So just, if you like, mimicking its sounds would not be challenging Quran only. So to the extent that we realize how profound Quran is, then we will be much more stronger about this claim, saying that whoever really challenges Quran would ridicule himself or herself in the first place.
Go ahead, Brother Abdulaziz.
Yeah, I just want to kind of repeat some of the thoughts that you guys have shared with us. I grew up in Arabic, and definitely one of the things that like everyone wanted to make very clear is that this is the most beautiful thing in terms of just the words. And I think there was so much emphasis on that, at least specifically where I grew up, that it shifted away from the beauty of the content completely, and the beauty of the fact that it's a guidance completely. Like I just became about the words, period. And it was like a challenge between different kind of Arabic literature. Like, okay, look, this is not poetry because it doesn't follow the rules of the musical element that they call darud in Arabic. Therefore, it's not poetry. But even though it's not poetry, it's more beautiful than any other type of poetry. And I don't know, just like it was really bad for me, at least. It worked for many people and good for them, but it really went far, far away from the core of the point, which in my opinion is the fact that it's a guidance. And it almost became like a meditation thing. Basically, it's, if you read something beautiful, it will make you maybe feel good. If you exercise, you might feel good. But if life shows up in different situations, those good feelings will not serve as guidance. And I think that's a problem with that argument.
Yeah, Jazakumullah khair. Very beautifully put. The true beauty, maybe, or one of its greatest, as Nursi says here, one of the things he lists is the eloquence of the word order, but he lists many other things as well. He talks about its conciseness and its style, and it's like its clarity, the power of its truth and its meanings. Like there's many other things that he also lists that add on to the beauty of the Quran. It's not one singular thing. So these are all my comments that I have for the first ray. So I will take a pause and let anyone else make a comment they'd like to make for the first ray before we continue on to the first aspect. Okay. So the first aspect, it's a bit long, but maybe we can read it. Atik, would you like to read it? Are you available?
Yeah, sure, I can read it. So first aspect. It possesses miraculousness, and its miraculousness exists for the following reasons. The great majority of the people of the Arabian Peninsula at that time were illiterate. Due to this, rather than in writing, they preserved the sources of their pride, historical events, and stories encouraging good morality by means of poetry and eloquence. Due to the attraction of poetry and eloquence, meaningful sayings would remain in people's memories and be passed down the generations. In consequence of this innate need, therefore, the goods most in demand in the immaterial market of that people were eloquence and fine speech. A tribe's poet or orator was like its greatest national hero. It was he who was their greatest source. It was he who was their greatest source of pride. Thus, among the peoples of the world, the eloquence and rhetoric of that intelligent people who, due to their intelligence, ruled the world after the establishment of Islam, was at the highest and most advanced degree. It was the thing most highly prized among them that they felt greatest need of, and was their cause of pride. They attached such value to eloquence that two tribes would do battle at the word of a poet or orator, and they would make peace at his word. They even wrote in gold on the walls of the Kaaba the 7 qasidas of 7 poets called the Al-Mu'allaqat al-Sab'a, and took great pride in them. It was at such a time when eloquence was the most sought after that the Quran was revealed, just as at the time of Musa, peace and blessing be upon him, it was magic that was most sought after, and at the time of Isa, peace be upon him, it was medicine. The most important of their miracles were in those fields. The Quran therefore invited the Arabian orators of that time to reply to even one of the shortest of the surahs. It challenged them with the decree of, and if you are in doubt about what we have revealed to our servant, then produce a surah resembling it. This is Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 23. It also said, if you do not believe, you shall be damned and shall go to hell. It provoked them intensely. It smashed their pride in fearsome manner. It was contemptuous of their arrogant minds. It condemned them firstly to eternal extinction, and then to eternal extinction in hell, as well as to worldly extinction. It said, either dispute me, or you and your property shall perish. If it had been possible to dispute the Quran, is it at all possible that while there was an easy solution, like disputing it with 1 or 2 lines and nullifying the claim, they should have chosen the most dangerous and the most difficult, the way of war? Yes, it is. Yes, is it at all possible that clever people, that politically minded nation who at one time were to govern the world through politics, should have abandoned the shortest, easiest, and most light way and chosen the most dangerous, which was going to cast their lives and all their property into peril? For if their literary figures had been able to dispute it with a few words, the Quran would have given up its claim, and they would have been saved from material and mortal disaster. Whereas they chose a perilous, lengthy road like war. That means it was not possible to dispute in by word. It was impossible, so they were compelled to fight with the sword. Furthermore, there are 2 compelling reasons for the Quran being imitated. The first is its enemies' ambition to dispute it. The other, its friends' pleasure at imitating it. Impelled by these, millions of books in Arabic have been written, but not one of them resembles the Quran. Whether learned or ignorant, whoever looks at it and at them is bound to say the Quran does not resemble these. Not one of them has been able to imitate it. The Quran is therefore inferior to all of them, and according to the consensus of friend and foe alike, this is completely non-valid and impossible, or the Quran is superior to all of them. If you say, how do you know that no one has tried to dispute it, and that no one has had sufficient confidence to challenge it, and that no one's help for anyone else was of any avail? The answer: if it had been possible to dispute it, most certainly it would have been attempted. For it was a question of honor and pride, and life and property were at risk. If it had been attempted, numerous people would have supported such an attempt. For those who obstinately oppose the truth have always been many. And if many people had supported it, they surely would have found fame. For insignificant contests even attracted the wonder of people and found fame in stories and tales. So an extraordinary contest and event such as that would never have remained secret. The most ugly and infamous things against Islam would have been passed down and become famous. But apart from one or two stories about Musaylima the liar, no such thing has been related. Musaylima was very eloquent, but when compared with the exposition of the Quran, which possesses infinite beauty, his words passed into the chronicles as nonsense. Thus, the miraculousness of the Quran's eloquence is as certain as twice 2 equals 4, and that is how it is.
Jazakumullah khair. So we have, I guess we have around 15 minutes left. It was a long first aspect, but I think we also touched upon it. So firstly, does anyone have any comment they'd like to make before we dive into a part? Okay, so in the beginning, it begins, we touched on this earlier, but it begins with how in that time of the Arabian Peninsula, it was poetry and eloquence that everyone held as like the highest thing. They respected eloquence and poetry. Like one thing that interested me was, even wars, it said even in their like battles, they would resolve it through poetry. Like the side that won in poetry would win. It was that much respect they gave poetry. And then Nursi goes on to make a comment right there. And then I also, like, it says that just as in the time of Moses, it was magic that was most sought after. And at the time of Jesus, it was medicine. So at the time of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, it was now eloquence, the eloquence of the word. This is like what spoke to people. And just like a side comment here, I just thought it was maybe you could call it a miracle. I mean, it is a miracle of the Quran, but it speaks to the people. Even like historically, even though we don't take Quran as a historical book, but even like the people it was historically first revealed to, it was made in a way that it spoke to them very directly as well. Just as it speaks to us today when we open it and we read it and we see that it explains our daily lives to us and it explains our problems to us, back then, it also spoke very directly to them in a way that they could understand. They were able to find a conversation with their creator in a different way and see the beauty in a different way. Or in the same way that we do today as well. Because we cannot, even though it's maybe eloquence is harder to see today, since there are a lot of people who read Quran that are maybe don't understand the Arabic language as much compared to then, since it was a smaller area. But still, eloquence was very important back then and spoke to them. And I thought that was interesting. But also, I also thought it was interesting that potentially if you are into medicine or if you are into magic, these things are they're also included in the Quran. Like, what does that mean? It means that, the Quran also speaks about, the Quran, like, let's say you're interested in medicine or magic, these are things in the world, and the Quran is something that speaks of the world. And it speaks of how, there's this healer, there's a creator that is the doer of everything, and how he controls everything. Like he has the hands, the forelock of everything is in his hands. And I think that it also encompasses in some ways what the people of Moses or the people of Jesus were saw as like the most high thing. So it's an encompassing book that speaks to all those people as well. And then continuing on, Brother Yusuf, go ahead.
And also this challenge is still active. Like there's still, we are receiving the message of Muhammad wasalam, and I think this aspect of like the poetry or orator, or let me say explaining your point, is still the thing that is the most desirable thing in today's day and age. Whoever can explain his point is going to win, in a sense. And I guess a practical example for that would be media or social media, whatever sort of media. Or even if you think about how science is being communicated. So as long as you can convince people, convincing truthfully or by deceiving them, but at the end of the day, whoever convinces the other is the winner. So still, this is an ongoing, if you like, as magic versus medicine versus explaining things to the others. This is the thing that is the most valuable thing to this day and age also. And I guess this is why investigative belief is so central, because science is apparently holding investigation in its hand and trying to convince people that this existence doesn't have a meaning. Like, I'm not talking about science as exploring, but science exploring plus its interpretation that is being done by a group of people that are called scientists today. So using this tool of explaining things in a eloquent way, people are being just channeled through certain ways, right? So Quran is also using the same tool, explaining the existence to the people in the most beautiful way. So I guess I should personally take a lesson from here, saying that this age needs to be addressed, or if I want to be a true student of Quran, I should follow path of Quran, meaning I should convince myself about the purpose and meaning of this existence, and also speak to others if I would like to share the beauty. Speak to others as Quran does, in an eloquent way, explaining the purpose of this existence in a eloquent way that speaks to their mind, their soul, their senses, and everything. That conviction is going to be established. So this is what Quran is doing, and it's still valid as of today.
Go ahead, Brother Abdulaziz.
Assalamu alaikum. I just remember when I was a little kid back in Mauritania, I was reading about all these miracles that all these prophets had. And I was like, oh man, I just wish that Prophet Muhammad had something cool, like he flew in the sky, like in front of everybody, or he did something really cool, like walked on the sea or something. And I was really obsessed with that idea. I was actually thinking about myself as unlucky person to have the prophet with the least cool, that was at least my opinion, to be honest, least cool miracle of all. But to take these things very seriously, which are very serious, it's really good that we have actually the words of guidance that can help. Otherwise, it's like you missed the show. There was like a really cool show, and man, you just missed the show. Somebody did something really cool 1400 years ago, and too bad you missed them. And now I'm thinking about it, like, wow, we are actually blessed that we have this book that has been the same since it has arrived. So just wanted to share this thought with you guys.
Yeah, thank you for your very honest recollection of your childhood. And I'm sure we've all had maybe similar, well, not thoughts like that, but we might have had similar thoughts maybe. And these miracles, these things that you maybe amaze you and you really think are very cool, but then, and you might not think the Quran is as such, but truly when you do read the Quran and you see how you know, it just helps you, like maybe hearing, you know, you can even hear about someone today just literally walk over water, or someone today like performing, let's say, a miracle, quote unquote, let's say something crazy and very powerful, but it's not going to solve my daily problems. It's not very helpful for me. It doesn't mean anything to me really. It just means, oh, a powerful person, sure, but still it doesn't really help me. So I need like a miracle like the Quran, which is truly a miracle that can actually help me rather than being this distant thing that's just powerful. Or Atik, go ahead.
So I kind of have a counterpoint to what Brother Abdul Aziz said, you know, about him desiring, you know, the Prophet to have a miracle. And in fact, the Prophet, you know, did have these supernatural miracles besides the Quran. Like in high school, I was walking with some friends, and you know, one of them, or they knew that I was Muslim, and he said, you know, he wanted to like make fun of me for being a Muslim. He's like, you guys believe that your prophet flew on a horse and went into the heavens, and I'm like, you know, how do I I'm like dumbfounded, you know, how do I respond to this? Because yeah, we do believe that, and it is supernatural and whatever, but that's not, you know, the foundation. That's not the principles of our belief. Like that's the most amazing thing, the, you know, that the central thing of our religion. And so I kind of felt like he was being disingenuous as bringing that up as a actual challenge or negative, you know, criticism against Islam, because it's like not even that relevant, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. And just like a side comment to what you said, like this belief or this miracle that we believe in, let's say our prophet going through Miraj and like rising up the heavens through like the Burak, like, you know, I'm sure other people as those children, like they came and said, oh, that's so funny to believe in. It's like, I make fun of you, but this is also, it reminds me of previously where Nursi was mentioning, you know, these geniuses that had their heads up in the skies and they were proud and they were conceited, and not to call those children conceited or proud, but you know, you also have, let's say in science, like something like a flower sprouting from the ground, it's like very normal. There's nothing significant about it. Or the fact that you know, the sun just raises every day and sets. These are just very basic things, and it's very normal to happen. But then they're like, oh, a horse raising you to the heavens, what a joke. And when I hear such things, I could think like, oh, I mean, like, what's truly the difference between them? Like, what's the one that causes one and the one that causes the other? So it just made me remember what Nursi said earlier. So continuing on then, or we have very little left, but I support you, Atik. And then so continuing on, we have Nursi says, the Quran therefore invited the Arabian orators of that time to reply to even one of the shortest of the surahs. It challenged them with the decree of, and if you are in doubt about what we have revealed to our servant, then produce a surah resembling it. It also said, if you do not believe, you shall be damned and shall go to hell. It provoked them intensely. It smashed their pride in fearsome manner. It was contemptuous of their arrogant minds. It condemned them firstly to eternal extinction and then to eternal extinction in hell, as well as to worldly extinction. It said, either dispute me or you and your property shall perish. So I think let's just like slowly dive into this verse the remaining time we have, and then next week we can go into it further. But you know, when I would first hear about these verses, or this verse about, come up with something resembling the Quran, initially my thought was, oh, you can't write anything that's as eloquent as the Quran. It's the wording of it. That's also the kind of mentality I grew up with. And I kind of just believed it. I was like, okay, like you can't do it. And no one has done it. But now, like after everything we're discussing today, we see that the true beauty, or the beauty lies in its meaning, in the truth that the Quran is speaking to you, and how it's explaining the world to you from your creator. It's the creator's speech to you. And in that sense, when you read this verse, you can easily say, yeah, you can't not write anything like it. You can't even write a surah that's resembling it. And as Nursi, he then interprets it further. He says, like, if you do not believe, you shall be damned and shall go to hell. This, you can imagine that, oh, if you don't believe in that Quran is like the book of Allah, then you're gonna go to hell. I think it's much deeper than this. It's saying that if you are not understanding these words that the Quran is speaking to you, if you do not believe that these words are true and that they're coming from your creator, if you do not, let's say, acknowledge this, then what else is there to help you from going to hell? Like, what else is going to save you from going to hell? What other book is out there that's going to save you from being damned? And that's why I think that I could confirm Nursi's words, and I agree with them, that there isn't anything else out there that can save me. But before we finish, I'd like to also hear your thoughts. Please feel free to make some comments, finishing comments, concluding remarks. And inshallah, next week we'll try to continue from here, whoever is moderating. Okay, then I'll just I'll end with the last sentence of this paragraph. It said, either dispute me or you and your property shall perish. And Nursi is like interpreting this verse very bluntly. He's saying that this verse is calling you out. Like the creator is calling you out, is saying, okay, come against me if you can. It's not like, it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. And like, let's say when we read this verse, it should be a challenge for us as well. It's not just for other people. It's like a challenge maybe directly to me first and foremost. It's if I don't understand this verse, if I don't believe in this verse, it's like, come up with something that resembles it then. Come up with another explanation that's going to explain what happens in this world, or that's going to explain your life to you, or that's going to be a speech that can encompass the whole creation, the whole universe. And Nursi is saying, either dispute me, the Quran, or you and your property shall perish. If you cannot dispute the Quran, if you cannot come up with another explanation, if there's no book or idea or ideology or religion out there that's going to be able to come up and say, here is an explanation of the meaning of existence, and here is why you were created, and this is your purpose, and this is how you're going to be given fulfilling answers to things, rather than just like things that make you feel good temporarily, but these are like, here is something that's going to be fulfilling answers. And if you're not able to come up with something that's going to give you fulfilling answers like that, then you're going to perish. You and your property are going to perish, because one, you're going to die eventually and you have nothing left after that. You don't believe in anything else, maybe. Secondly, the world everything is just moving and everything is very transient. Everything you have is just going to die. Your moments are going to die. Your feelings are going to die, and nothing will be left to you. You're just going to perish. And it's just despair. Yeah, so it's Nursi is very I like his interpretation. It's very much a challenge for us, for myself. And maybe next time I read a verse and I'm not sure what it means, or if I want to disagree, or similar thoughts, then I could be like, what else can I provide? Like, do I have any other answers to this? What is a better explanation? And instead of coming up with it requires some honesty with yourself, instead of just coming up with like like small sentence answers like, meaning of life, what are you talking about, type of things. it requires being honest with yourself and thinking about it, or even in things like, let's say, there's that, it talks about punishment in the Quran. It talks about, you will sometimes go to trials and different things. So it doesn't always sound so rosy and nice colored and rainbows. So some things require much more thought, and you need to understand it much more deeply, and you need to be much more honest with yourself about it. But anyways, I think we are out of time. And so anyone would like to make a final comment, and then we will end it, inshallah. Brother Birkan, would you like to make your last comment so that we end on a good note, a beautiful note, inshallah?
Oh, I really don't have much to say, to be honest. I think we already studied all important parts. So let's end with your beautiful comment and not to add anything to it.
Okay. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة مع الصلوات.